You'd think this was
Welcome, everyone. I'm Amy Seeley, president of Seeley Test Pros, helping students succeed in all kinds of tests from 8th grade to grad school in Cleveland, Ohio.
And I'm Mike Bergen, president of Chariot Learning, helping students with test school and life based out of Rochester, New York.
Joining us today is Marc Gray from Odyssey College Prep.
Hey, Marc. So great to see you again.
And after such a short time.
Exactly. So for context, for anyone watching this video, why are we talking to Marc today? Because we very recently recorded a podcast on Tests and the Rest with Marc, asking what is the Highlands Ability Battery? And that is a fascinating podcast that we recommend everybody listen to before watching this video. And after the video, Marc then administered a Highlands Ability Battery to each of us, and neither of us know how we did. So we took this extensive battery, and true to Marc's prediction, we both at times felt like idiots. Is that fair to say, Amy?
That is 100% true.
We didn't take them together, so we don't know how either of us did. We don't know how we personally did. Marc has all the answers here.
I have some suspicions, though, of how I did. So at least I would say I have some clues about where the strengths and weaknesses may be. So
Marc, set us up. Let's give everybody along with us the first things we need to know as you unveil our answers or our results.
Okay, perfect. So the prophecy did come true on the ones where you felt a little ditzy, perhaps.
I definitely felt ditzy. I don't know about Mike.
Okay.
I don't think ditzy is a feeling that I get often. I definitely felt like I was not performing to par.
No, actually, as I took it, though, knowing that Mike was taking it, and my mind was like, what am I going to discover about Mike that maybe I don't know? Or what is he going to discover about me that reveals something that now he's like, oh, that's why she does that.
Your perfect pitch.
We've got all the goods on both of you. So before we dive into your scores, just a couple of things I want to reiterate from the last time we spoke. This is not an IQ test, right? We both know you're smart, you're educators. We are presuming that you're smart, so not an IQ test. So the primary utility of this is just to figure out what kind of tasks do both of you just kind of wake up being good at, right? And there's to emphasize that high score does not mean good score, low score does not mean bad score. As we'll see, there's plenty of advantages to being low, just as there's disadvantages to being high on things. So with that said, you want to get into everything?
We do.
Okay.
Drum roll.
So the first wave of aptitudes that we measure are, we call them the personal style aptitudes. So these have little to do with what a person should do for a living, but more what role they best occupy. Because I'm a millennial and I go through my life through office analogies. Have the two of you seen The Office?
Of course.
Okay. So you know Michael Scott and Robert California.
Yes.
Both at the same time had the same job, right? But both of them, Michael wanted meetings all the time. Robert California wanted to do it with an email. So that's kind of the way that you interact with people the best. That's what we're going to talk about first. So very first one is the generalist specialist aptitude. Okay. So you're either one or the other, or you're in the middle. Both of you scored the same on this one. You're
really?
Yeah, you're both very high on this one. So let me see if you can guess which one. We'll let Mike take a stab at this.
Okay, go on. Set it up.
Generalists are very good at sharing responsibilities with other people and keeping everyone on the same page. Specialists serve better when they're in the role of an expert, and they like to have a lot of control over their projects. So they don't typically prefer to delegate things and share responsibility.
Oh, then I know. I would guess what I am.
I was going to say generalist, but I think we're both specialists.
I would say specialist. Well, that's what's interesting, though, about our interaction for Mike and I, because we do have to work as a team. So there's this, and we're not used to that because we operate in our own spheres. But with regards to the podcast and things we do, that is where there's a difference, because we do our own thing normally, right?
Part of the fun of the podcast.
It is.
So it's an interesting one. My wife is a really high specialist, and it's not that they don't work well with people. It's just that the idea of like asking someone else to do something just doesn't even enter their mind.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes
Like-
total sense.
Well, I do want to add one thing though.
Sure.
Given our ages and just experience careers, I do wonder to some extent if my life experience or Mike's has led us to be more of a specialist in that in our current roles, we have to operate. Or is it that is it chicken and egg? Is it that we're in our roles because we are more lean towards specialists? Or is it we just be kind of morphed into one because that's kind of how we run our businesses? I'm just wondering.
So the personal style aptitudes, these will change more than the rest of them will.
Oh, so if we
As you
become
get
better
older.
at delegating, then we might shift
Become more of a
closer to the
Absolutely.
center
Yeah.
of the axis. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was the work sample when like words popped up and you had to just write down what came to your mind.
Oh, yes, that was
So like the weirder your answers were, the more specialist you.
Oh,
were.
interesting.
okay. I didn't understand what I was.
I'd love to see the research supporting those conclusions.
Yeah,
You bet.
but I did as I did that part of
The
it. I
skeptic
thought,
here.
but I did think to myself, I didn't have any idea what that was going to predict, what that particular activity was predicting. I just knew that I was like words.
Yeah, I
head.
took it straight up, but I wondered if it was just measuring like how quickly you could respond,
Right.
or number of words in your response.
How weird your thinking is, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So like if the word up, comes up and you write down, that's like a generalist answer, right?
Oh,
Whereas-
I remember some of those. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and not all of them are measured.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, so there we go. Now,
Awesome.
next one. This one's not too revelatory. Okay, we've heard these words before, depending on what BuzzFeed quiz we've taken recently. Introvert, extrovert. Guess which one?
Yeah, we're
We both have to be
high
extrovert.
Yeah,
We
both of you are
have to be.
extroverts.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
So a couple of things. These words mean different things depending on which assessment you're taking. For this one, it primarily relates to two things: how you get energy being around people, right? And then two, how you process your ideas. So as extroverts, they typically do that out loud, so they do their best thinking when other people are around.
It's totally true. Well, that's why I think Mike and I, in terms of just our connection, we benefit from a lot of that talking and verbalizing about what we're doing, how we're doing it. Yeah. So it's it sometimes feels like you're just riffing, but you're also benefiting from that. Exactly.
That's the thinking. That's the processing part.
Right.
Yep. Same here. And I just want to add, no one can be one way like all the time. Like the very first girl I tested, she was a 99% extrovert, lots of things to say. She needed time to like go in a room and read, right? But the further you are on that spectrum, the more predictable those behaviors will be. So
That's
okay,
awesome.
now we finally got into one that the two of you are different on. Okay, so this is time frame orientation. Do you remember the box or the little shapes and you had to write about them?
I'm trying to remember that activity.
The shapes that you had to write about.
Let me pull it up.
Oh, where you just you were typing. You just had to start typing.
Oh, it's kind of like a Rorschach kind of.
Right. Okay, this is interesting. So tell us more.
Okay, so this doesn't measure how well you use your time, thankfully, right? What it does measure is when you think of the future, how far out are you thinking? So one of you is low, okay? One of you thinks a few months to a year out, okay? The other one is very high, and you think 5 to 10 years out.
Okay, I'm going to predict that I'm the one in the very here and now, and Mike is the one very far out. But maybe I'm wrong.
I would agree with that prediction.
That would be good, because I'm like, that seems right to me.
So this is where you can really see that there's perks of kind of being high or low. So people who are low, they're very into, like you said, the here and now. So when they do something, they want there to be like a return for their efforts, right? People who are really high, they're willing to put forth a ton of unrewarded effort for something to eventually come.
Oh, that's the story of my life. I
that-
think eventually
fruition.
something's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, like even your blog, right? That took a long time to kind of come to fruition, right?
He does.
Um,
He's a long game player, Mike
Mhm.
Bergen.
It also means that you'll be more attracted to like longer term projects. So like if you were, so like I often give the examples of architects, like low time frame, think of residential projects. High time frame, think of like industrial or like, longer term.
I appreciate hearing that. I think,
Mhm.
Amy, I value the idea of being able to plan long term. I
Sure.
do like that.
Whereas I'm like, what's tomorrow? That's what we're doing now, right? I'm the squirrel. What is it? The squirrel, right? The squirrel, like squirrel. That's me.
Well, it's interesting. People that are really high, they typically benefit from like calendars and devices like that because without them, they won't show up, because they're thinking so far in the future. Whereas people who are lower, they typically make good, like managerial operators, like,
Because they can handle the day to day,
mhm,
take care of the
Operations,
details.
kind of like operational. Is that what you sort of mean? Like,
absolutely. Mhm.
yeah, that would make
Yeah.
sense.
You're less likely to get an extension on your taxes. Yeah. Because you're thinking about the deadlines.
Right. No, that's
Mhm.
I'm living my like recently. I feel like that's how I'm living my life. Like obviously with the SAT changing, part of me is like, I could have this vision of long term. It's like, no, if it's not tomorrow, it's not in my realm. That's my current state. Yeah.
It's a good way to be.
Yeah.
Well,
It's so far it serves you well. You know what this has to do with too? I'm wondering people who are procrastinators,
mhm.
and I very much am one, but I'm also, I think, a high functioning person. So you give me a deadline, you give me, a short term, I can produce too. I like to think that I can produce. So
Sure.
I can have that ability to be in the here and now and know that even if that I can get some product out that actually is still good work. I like to think
Yeah.
that.
And even if like whether you're high or low or not, like you've got to be able to do both. Just,
Mhm.
like,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
but with one aptitude being in a certain way, you're just going to naturally be inclined to think, one
Mhm.
way. So, people who are really high, because they're thinking so far out, they're more likely to think there's always going to be more time, right?
Yeah.
A lot of novelists that I've tested are really high, because there's
And a
nothing
lot of
immediately.
frustrated novelists.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have one more chapter.
Yeah, I've tested two that published. So anyway. But okay. All right. We're gonna get to what are called the driving abilities. These are the most important ones. Okay.
Okay.
And there's 5 of them. And you two have 2 of them in common, and 3 that are like you're on opposite ends of the spectrum on.
Ooh, spicy.
Yeah, so this will be good. All right. And I'd like to make a little guessing game out of this. So I'm gonna talk about Amy first, and then I'd like Mike to guess which one she is.
Okay.
Is that allowed?
Absolutely. It's preferred.
Okay. So this one is called classification. Do you remember the work sample where you had the 6 images and you had to click on the ones that had something in common?
Oh my God, I hated that one.
Yeah,
I actually didn't finish tons of them. I just was like, I don't see any connection. Yeah. So
it can
I
be a
felt like some
stressful
of
one.
them did not have connections.
yeah.
I
Okay.
don't know if that's true. Did every single set have connections? Or maybe
Presumably.
you shouldn't tell us. We don't want to ruin the test for other
Right.
people.
Right.
Don't let us behind the curtain.
Okay.
Oh, wizard.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
That was my determination.
It'll take the mysticism out of it. Yeah. So okay, so people who are high on this are characterized by their ability to notice patterns in things very, very, very quickly. Okay, and the way that translates to work is they need problems to solve, like a steady stream of them. They do well in high risk, or not high risk, but a fast paced scenario, like an ER doctor, right? People who are low are much better at reflecting and like taking time to really mull things over. So they're typically better listeners. They won't interrupt people as much, presumably.
Okay, let's get to the part that describes Amy, though.
Yeah. Which one? High or low?
I thought that was a third option.
Nope. High or low?
I would really think that she's more in the first area. I think that she's, by nature of her profession and her competence, more of a problem solver in the moment.
Yep.
Things like that.
So Mike is wrong.
I think I was going to say,
Brutal.
I don't think I am. As you described it, I just know that with that task, it was very difficult for me. And many of them, I just I didn't answer, I think, some of them. But what's interesting about that is I think with students, patterns and paying attention, I do see things, but I also must say some of that may just be experiential. Over time, I've learned what patterns to look for. So I might be confusing in the moment. I can see certain things, but it's because those patterns have existed before and I pick up on them as opposed to discovering a new pattern. That might be. Yeah, I think some of my colleagues, Mike, a lot of our colleagues, I give them so much more credit because I think I'm slow to the chase where I'm like, oh, they picked up on something before I did. But then once I get it, then I think I now know what to look for. So,
well, it's interesting. So in their profession, if someone is low, whenever they make quick choices, they typically make quick choices based on experience, right? So other people who may have a natural pattern recognition aptitude may come to a decision quicker, fresh, but who knows if it's going to be right or not, right? Whereas someone who's low they're an experiential problem solver, so they'll reflect on what worked in the past, which is often why a lot of executives that I test, they're low on this, like CEOs and CFOs, because you want them to make choices based off experience. So yeah,
makes sense.
What about Mike, Amy? Do you think he's high or low on this?
I would say he's high.
He's in the 99th percentile.
Yeah, my gut on that was that Mike would be high on that. I mean, but obviously working with him, one of the benefits to me of our, relationship is that he does see things. And I'm like, and then of course I get to grab onto that experience and go, oh yes, now I see that too. But I think he's much quicker to that, I would say, than I am. Yeah.
Yeah. People who are high, they catch on very quickly to new things. But yes.
But sometimes I catch him going a little too fast. So I will say that I feel like
I would imagine that's the downside.
But in general, I've learned to realize much of the time he is on something, but every so often I get to be like, I don't think so.
Yep. And
he said only 99th percentile.
This is true. I only get 1%. I only get 1% time right.
So the baggage to being high, when you notice a problem, it has to be solved. Yeah. Right?
Yes.
So if someone comes to you with a problem and they're still talking about it and you've got the solution loaded in the chamber, there's going to be this urge to
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So
also the dumb problems that also person shouldn't waste time trying to solve them, but they get in my head.
Sure. That's okay. Let's see here. Okay, next one. The two of you are both high on this one. I just gave the answer. Whoops.
You did.
Okay.
You did give the answer.
Okay.
That's
all
okay.
Right. Okay, well let me see if I can turn it around. Okay. So this is called concept organization. I'll let you determine which one's high and which one's low. One is good at simplifying lots of information, like cutting the fat off and getting down to what needs to get done. The other is analyzing, so making use of all the parts and turning it into a logical sequence of organized. So So which one do you think you're?
It's funny because our work requires us to simplify concepts, but we have to understand the full schema. So I would guess if if the high is the being able to synthesize a complex schema of information, then that would make sense. But I think as educators, our job is to simplify.
What do you think, Amy?
You mean like which one of us is which?
Well, both of you have the same score.
Oh, we have the same score. Oh, which are we better at? I think.
Do you agree with Mike?
Yes. No, I do. I 100%.
Okay.
100%. I do agree with Mike. Yeah.
Gotcha. I do too.
Yeah.
Both of you were high.
Yeah. Well, because right, that is what we do for a living. We simplify things because with students, there is a lot. And so I think we've just gotten really good. We're good at that. Yeah.
Yeah. And people who are really high, they're typically really good at being put on the spot to explain something like really complicated. Right. Whereas people who are low, they're good at getting down to what needs to get done. But if you need something like a real complicated analysis, like vocalized, it may take them a bit to kind of gather their thoughts together.
Gotcha.
But both of you are really high on this one.
So what was this called? Concept mapping?
Concept organization. Okay. So do you remember where you had to stack stuff in the
Oh, I liked that one. I actually liked, I actually, that was one that I was not expecting. But I did like the issue, of course, is just time. For a couple of them, it was like, whoa, because those like flow charts became more complex as far as how you were going to organize the information. Yeah, that was one of my, I enjoyed that actually, that activity.
The one that made us feel good. Yeah, I really like this one too. It's also the baggage with it is you're more likely to over explain.
Oh, I definitely am an over explainer.
Yeah. Whereas that typically doesn't happen as much with people who score low.
Right.
But yeah, it's a neat one. I know Mike does, but if you write curriculum, that's also something that's really helpful.
For sure.
Because you have to think, you have to think about how you're going to develop it, what that development looks like in terms of presentation too. Yeah.
Okay. Next one. This doesn't, it's idea productivity. It doesn't measure how good your ideas are. Okay. It's just how many you have at any given time.
Are we different on this one?
You're actually the same.
Oh, okay.
I was really surprised by this one. This was one that I've gotten pretty good at predicting people. But I was completely wrong on this one.
For both of us or one of us?
Both.
Okay.
So one, if you're really low, you're good at basically being really decisive. You may not have like raw brainstorming capabilities of just coming up with stuff, but you're really good at kind of picking options. Whereas people who are really high, they're good at coming up with stuff. And the main thing is they can't shut it off because like the ideas are always just coming.
And we're the same. We're similar to this one.
You are. Yeah.
See, I actually would not have predicted that.
I would not have either.
Mike is very much the idea producer, I would say. So that's why I find it interesting that I would be high as well.
But maybe we're not both high. Maybe we're both low and we're both decisive.
Oh, you mean
he didn't say what we were yet.
Oh, well, then if we're the same, it's going to shock me because I'm like, then that must, I'm presuming then we're high because I put Mike as high.
You're both low.
Actually. Yeah, we're both decisive.
Yeah. So if
we sift through more quickly and get to better ideas.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's
at least what we think are better ideas.
Yeah.
So people who are low are actually really good at that. They're good at editing. Like they're good at they're like, that's no. Okay, that's a good one.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. See, doesn't that sound right, Amy?
It does.
I think it's good to be low in this one. I mean, that's
no, that makes sense. Okay. I think what we're describing makes sense. That gotcha. We sift through things and pick things.
There's actually a ton of baggage for being high on this one. Not that it's bad or anything. Right. People who
baggage.
are high.
I like how that's described. That even disadvantage. This is baggage. Things you're burdened with.
Just trauma that we all have. Yeah. When people who are typically high, they're often really persuasive because if one way of persuading isn't working, they can just come up with another one.
Yeah.
But again, it's their brain's wired to come up with options, not pick one. So, so that can be tough. But being low, I often find that people with a high concept organization, like the two of you, come across as being high. They always have, but what they really have aren't ideas, but are solutions. Right? You know.
Gotcha.
So interesting. These next two are very, very strange. The next one that I'm about to get to is the hardest one to explain. After doing this for years, I still get parents that are like, okay, huh? But this is the spatial relations theory one. It's the paper folding one.
Oh,
Oh,
that was hard.
I
That one
hated
was
that. I knew, and I
challenging.
knew when it started, I'm like, can I make, luckily these are short exercises and you can get through them. But I remember doing those kinds of things like in high school, some test, right? And I was like, girl, you are so not going to make it through this activity. Yeah. I hated it.
Well, yeah, this is the one where this is the least favorite work sample. Everyone agrees that they don't enjoy this one. So
That wasn't my least favorite, but
it wasn't.
no, there were ones I liked less.
Mine, that was my least favorite.
You'll have to tell me when we get to the least favorite ones.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you are high, your mind will gravitate towards working with theoretical components and integrated systems. Okay, so what I mean by integrated systems, I mean you like the whole bird's eye view versus a particular part. So people who are low, they typically don't want a lot of distance with their work. They want to work up close and personal with it. So like often nurses are typically low, whereas many physicians are really high. So what do we think? Both of you are different on these. Let's let Amy decide. What do you think Mike is?
I'm thinking he's high. I think he's more big picture, theoretical. That would be my
You are
prediction. He likes to be more up close.
I'm very much,
hands-on.
which I think is why, actually, to be fair, that is where in our relationship sometimes I think it's a nice balance because of the work that we do. That we complement each other and with a lot of like creative things we do or things we are producing. I think that would be what I would suspect. Yeah.
Yep. Well done. You are correct.
I like to point out when like the detail work does not support the big picture work.
Yeah, and that's vital.
Yeah, I like the integrated systems piece. I like bringing in a lot of theory to practice.
But I also think that goes with my ability of like wanting to do in the here and now. Little things can be done in the here and now, right? The big picture thinking often like with Mike being more like a long-term thinker, bigger theoretical ideas kind of the timeline there is different. So I think those two abilities on my part, those kind of suit each other. Yeah.
Yeah, you're bringing up something interesting. It's not so much what kind of one does by itself, but how they all kind of work.
Function together.
Exactly.
Yeah, in tandem together.
I'm looking for patterns here.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice why we're doing this together, right?
Right.
We're trying to understand a more holistic battery.
Yeah. There's a lot of complementary stuff going on between the two of you. So let's take a look at the next one. The next one is the blocks. Remember the blocks?
Oh,
the spatial rotation.
Yeah, I didn't the paper, those are my two lead because anything spatial I just zone out on. Yeah.
Okay. So Mike, what do you think? I'm gonna let you guess your own. Were you high or low?
I think I was higher than Amy.
I would I was doing it. No. When I was doing
it, I'm okay at that. I think I'm pretty good at it.
I just gave Mike way more credit in every activity. He's probably beating me in this too.
There's no beating.
I know. No, I get it. No, and I was.
They're just being better then. That's all.
That just. But I imagined in that activity as I did it, Mike is probably better at this than I am.
I call this the Minecraft aptitude.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So research has shown that gender actually plays a role in this. Men are often higher than this.
That one. I do know. Right. Yes.
Yeah. Mike is high on this one. I was expecting both of you to be low because typically people who work in education are low. So
I'm visual. I do Photoshop. I play video games. Like I do a lot of stuff in that.
I don't do any of that.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Well, the higher you are, the more likely your work will either center around two things one, concrete facts, or two, actual like materials, like concrete things that you can touch. So a good friend of mine, Rhett Hunt, he's a corporate attorney. This is his highest aptitude, and like corporate law is the world of ideas. So I was like, Rhett, how are you scratching that itch if you're doing corporate law? Well, he works on cars in his spare time, right? So you got to have a physical outlet of some way to channel it if it's high. Also, people who like mess with data and stuff, they're typically really high on this. Now, people who are low, an advantage they have is that if there is an emotional component to a job, they're much more likely to see value in those things, right? So they'll often make better cheerleaders, like they can encourage people. Not that Mike is this like sociopath, but
well, that might be when you mentioned earlier about gender. You said this is something that you see as gender influence, which obviously when you're talking about sensitivity or being even empathetic, that, I mean, would trend more, not trying to be sexist, but it would, that's why you could see those trends a little bit more, I think.
Makes sense. Yeah. But yeah, basically when you're low, your mind centers on intangible things versus, I'm low in this, which makes sense, right? You can't go to the supermarket and pick up a 6-pack of aptitudes, right? So, any questions on that one? Any thoughts?
No, it's interesting.
Okay. Mike, I feel like you have opinions.
No,
Thoughts? No?
I think that it makes sense for kind of what you're talking about. Not that the work that I do is tangible or concrete, but
sure,
I think everything pieces together.
Yeah,
there's a framework there.
So those are all the driving abilities. Those are the real juicy ones. There's a few others. I don't think we'll have time to get to all of them, but I would like to get to the learning channels, which is how you best learn. So, verbal memory. Let's just, for the sake of fun, let's pretend this is a contest just for a minute, as if high means you win and low means you lost. Okay. Who do you think remembers what they read better between the two of you?
Maybe Amy.
I feel like I would give myself that point. I feel like that would be something that maybe I would be better at.
Yep. Amy has the highest, very high verbal memory. So the quintessential way of studying your notes probably worked really well for you in college and high school. Now, who do you think remembers what they hear better?
Oh, it's definitely not me. It's not me. I have a horrible audio. My memory, that I don't like learning from hearing. I'm really bad at it, so I'm going to give that one to Mike.
Yep, Mike's in the mid-range on this one.
Yeah.
Nobody's high.
Nobody's high on this one. Yeah.
Oh, I hated all of the audio tests.
Oh, they were the worst. I mean, it was does this have to do with the sounds where you had to determine if the frequency? Mike and I afterwards were like, could you even tell a difference between? I'm like,
right. There were some. I didn't think it was just a joke. I thought I heard the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah. No, the same here. It was just like, well, especially the more of them there were, the more tones there were. Even it was like, I can't keep up with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So part of that measures like your foreign language aptitude, the pitch discrimination one.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, a lot of chemists are really high on that one for some
interesting.
reason. Yeah. So I've got 2 chemical engineers that are tutors for me, and both of them are really high on it. Yeah. Okay. What about learning through images? It's called design memory. Do you guys remember
that? Was a really hard one. Was that the one where they had all the objects and you had to guess what changed? What?
Yes. That was
so hard.
Well, actually, no. So you said learning through memory. This is where I felt like I didn't catch up to realize, dude, you're getting the same tray, but if you could just remember sort of the original tray, it made it easier. So I felt like I might have gotten better at it as I progressed because I was recognizing something from way back. But in terms of learning through memory, which of us?
Images.
Images. So do you want to know which of us would be better at, were we different? Were Mike and I different with that?
Yeah, one was low, one was in the mid range. No one was high, as Mike said.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm feeling like I think Mike might be better at this than I am.
He was.
Yeah,
But
that's what I
okay.
would, that would be my guess. Yeah.
That
Okay.
was a tough challenge, though. That was.
It was. Yeah.
I would be impressed with people who were really high at that.
You know, I tested 2 kids this week that were in the 90th percentile on it.
It's amazing.
Well,
One was an artist, right, which makes sense, and the other's into like marketing and stuff. Mm-hmm.
Well, is there an element there to talk about like a photographic memory? If someone were to have a photographic memory, in theory, that would make them much better at the task. Or is that
we say that as if it's like some mystical cool thing,
right?
But it would actually be like, well, what kind of photographic memory do they have?
Okay,
right.
Gotcha.
So like, if their design memory is really high, they're probably going to be really good at remembering images, but maybe not words.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Right. This would be for that particular task. Would be.
Wait, was this one of the tasks? Well, the task with the numbers where you had to remember where all the letters or what they were, and you're like, yeah, okay, because that was like,
let's go to that one. That's called
that was
memory.
Mystifying. Like,
Yeah.
Which one do we think scored higher on that one?
I'm gonna give it to Mike.
Nope. I had a plan for
Amy
it. I didn't do that well, but I had a plan to attack it.
Amy scored in the mid range. Mike was low on that one.
Wow.
This has nothing
My plan
to do
was
with
bad.
how good you are at math, by the way. It's how well you can remember long sequences of numbers.
Well, that's what I figured. And then, but
I couldn't.
To me,
you did well in the 90s, remembering phone numbers, didn't you, Amy?
I did. Oh, I use that example with students about memory. Is that that's where you get into patterns. I was looking for any sort of pattern that my brain could like get into with the numbers. But I mean, I don't think I did. Well, you said I was mid-range because I'm like, I definitely wasn't great at it, but it's satisfying to know I was better at than Mike.
Yeah. No, I'm terrible. I don't know phone numbers at all. Like there was a time I could remember them. I can't remember a single phone number now.
Same here. I don't know my wife's.
I still don't know my wife's.
Yeah.
I have to look at my phone every time I need to write it down somewhere.
Amy says, shame on us.
And she's had the same number for 25 years.
Well, can you guys remember your phone number like when you were like in grade school? You know, do you still
of course,
those
numbers?
Your first boyfriend or like girlfriend, like do you remember her number? You know, that kind of thing.
That's back when we had to remember these things.
Correct. Right. Yep. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of it's an outdated aptitude in some ways because our phones remember a lot of that for us, but software engineers and computer programmers, they typically benefit when it's really high, just long sequences of code, you know,
that are apparently random. Like sometimes the randomness of it is what makes it more challenging because your brain can't make sense of it because there isn't really any sense to be made, right?
Amy, the thing that I heard was that he said the thing that you were better than me at was an outdated skill.
No.
Thanks, Mike.
And verbal memory. She's a better reader than you. So
I'll take that one.
That's why she's an ACT trainer in reading.
That's right.
Yep. And there's basically no downside to being high on that one. And then last one. Okay, rhythm memory. Which one of you are better at remembering gestures or like movements?
I have no idea.
Okay, so
there's actually a lot of advantages to being low on this one. One's low and one's in the mid-range.
Well, the tricky part about making this guess for each of us is that Mike and I operate in a virtual space 98% of the time. So I feel like being aware of what that kind of ability for him would be, I'd be less able to predict it because I only see him in a box, right?
Sure.
So I would say like that one, it would be hard for me to predict.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I wouldn't even know.
I mean, he doesn't know what I look like from the neck down. What I do with.
So Mike's in the mid range, you're in the low range. Advantages of being in the low ranges, you can sit still for longer periods of time.
Oh, I could totally predict
Oh,
that.
if you had said that, I
Oh,
would have said
yeah.
I was high.
Oh, no,
I can't sit still at all.
Oh, when we
Yeah.
are in person, I
Yeah.
can watch that on him. Like he's getting, actually, I do see that on his face in Zoom, like testiness though.
Oh yeah, if you'd said that, or like,
Yes, I
fidgety.
could have said, yeah, he's fidgety. I could totally predict that for Mike.
Same. So
Yeah.
people who are really high, it's just they have a tough time sitting still. A lot of actors, athletes, they're often really high on this one.
Yeah.
So that I believe
So what tested that? How were you able to test that?
it was one of the music ones.
Oh, really?
You had to anticipate like the rhythm of something, like if it was different or the same.
Oh, that was where you were predicting like there's like 4 notes or 6 notes, and you were like, which is the one that changed from the
beats? Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Well, I'm wondering if there's something to that of just having to stop and think, like sitting or being kind of calm, that might be connected to that.
Oh, because you were low on it.
Right.
Yep. I typically the kids I've tested 6 valedictorians, and like 2/3 of them were low on this one. I mean, those kids can just sit down and grind their workout, right, and study for long periods of time.
Bless them for that.
Yeah, bless them for that. Yeah, I'm high on it, so I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm no valedictorian.
Right.
No, but I could see that. I'm someone who can dig into something and really stick with it, or so I could see that I would be lower on that one. Yeah.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous of you on that one.
Same.
I'll teach you my ways.
Very good. Very good. So how would you guys feel if I told you that was all of them?
I think there's more.
All of the aptitudes.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
There are 2 skills.
Oh, what are the skills? Okay, the skills.
Typing speed, both of you are in the mid-range on.
Oh, I'm so bad at typing.
Okay, and then vocab. So keep in mind vocab.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Mike and I know.
Way high.
No, the only thing I want to know that matters here is, was one of us higher?
You're both the same. Yeah.
Okay.
95th percentile.
Okay.
95th percentile. That's
Mike's,
scandalous.
no, Mike's disappointed because he probably wanted to be 99.
He
Right?
probably
Didn't
did.
you?
Well, no, yes, but I mean, I'll take 90. But I would think you'd be more dissatisfied with not being 99.
I'm dissatisfied.
But I mean, to be fair, so interesting fact about that. I mean, obviously with Mike and I in the careers we have been in for like 30 years.
Sure.
And much of that time we were SAT, vocabulary, reading. So many of those words were like, to me, like, oh yeah, these are kind of words I've interacted with over my career.
Creating analogies with them.
Right.
Yeah,
there
I say
might have been
draconian
2
every
words.
day. Yeah.
There
Yeah.
might have been like 2 words that, or maybe 2 or 3 words that I was like, oh, that is not a word I've seen before.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they were all words that I, was familiar with. So
I agree with that. There were a couple of words that I forgot I had wanted to look up after the fact, and I forgot what they were because I was like, I never heard that word. I couldn't break it down.
But what's funny about that is I do sometimes consider Mike to be better verbally than I am, because he's obviously much more of like a writer than I am, or people would even know because I don't usually write much. But that's interesting. That doesn't matter that he writes more than I do, because we still have a similar verbal.
Well, also
vocabulary.
but your verbal memory is higher than his too, right?
Okay.
So you can remember what you read slightly
Yep.
better. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think he's saying you should do more writing, Amy.
That would help you out a lot.
Would help you out a lot.
It would. I know. I wish I did write more. It's just on the to-do list of life, it goes to the bottom.
Well, there's one more.
Yeah, we have time. As long as we're talking about ourselves, we have.
I mean, we can
we can
talk
talk about this all day, and we will.
Okay.
We're not going to stop you if it's about us.
Okay, fair enough. So there's one that measures how fast and how accurately you read and edit. It's called visual speed and visual accuracy.
Okay. I'm going to probably give him way better at that than me.
Well, so it's measured by 2 things. So you're higher than him on one of them. He's higher than you on the other. Listen to me. I've like totally bought into this competition thing, even though that's not That's not how it works.
That's what it's about. So she's a faster reader. I'm a faster editor.
So, sort of. So let me pull your scores up. Okay, got it. So Amy reads faster. 60th percentile. Her accuracy, so that's like your ability, like your eyes keeping up with or your brain keeping up with your eyes. Mike's actually like really, really good on that one.
That's what I would have predicted for him. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're the speed reader, he's the like human Grammarly.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Well, but now here's a question though. There's a factor there of the typing part. I never ever took typing or keyboarding or any of that. I still type. And so when I was doing, I remember that activity, I remember thinking to myself, I just can't like get the keys because you couldn't go back, right? Like once you hit that key,
that was frustrating to not be able to change everything.
Right. And so there was this element I know with that of me being like, how could someone's bad typing though factor? Like to me, that was the part that I don't get. Like,
so the typing speed assessment, however fast you typed on that's factored into the other ones.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
So if you were a slower typer, your scores would be changed, but your typing speed wasn't. Yeah. Your typing speed wasn't like below average or anything.
Okay, gotcha. I just watch people sometimes do it, and I think, God, that's fast. And they're looking right at the screen. I mean, I literally look down at the keyboard to type. So,
yeah. Okay, so I don't want to get ahead of you. Is there anything else you wanted to share before I ask a big question?
I think that's it.
So, what kind of professions do people with our profiles tend to excel in or gravitate to?
Are we in the right professions? Should we change industries?
It's not too late. It's
not too late.
Let me pull that up. So I've been looking at the leader report. Because as we discussed, you guys aren't looking to change jobs anytime soon. But let me pull up the career profiles for you. Okay. So first off, what I'm about to show you, this is just based on your aptitudes, okay? Not your interests, not your values, not, anything else. We're just specifically looking at aptitudes. Let's go with Amy first. So with Amy, do you want me to show you your top 50, Amy?
Sure. Why not?
Okay. Electrical engineer. That's interesting.
No way. I missed my calling.
Accountant.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. If you want to see a top iTunes, like top 50, we can do that.
Historian. He had historian on
well,
there.
that would be totally
the top one.
Yeah.
Well, no, you know why? I was a history major. I love history. Like that makes total sense, right?
That's so interesting. That's cool.
Archivist, I would have loved that. Administrative law judge, yes. Regulatory affairs. Oh, yeah.
Mike's like, this is wonderful. What's mine?
No, this is great. This is I think the historian is perfect.
Yeah. No, there's a bunch of those there that make total sense for me that I would have been.
Financial manager, school psychologist.
Yep. 100%. Lawyer. I mean, you guys will laugh. There's a funny story about I've gone back to school after college twice, both times, once to be a lawyer, but got pregnant and then didn't go. And then the other time went back to become, a counselor, school counselor, got pregnant. That was the end of that.
There you go.
So what's funny is those are all on that list of careers that I could have pursued.
I couldn't see you being happy as a lawyer, though.
Probably not.
School psychologist, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think I'm really right for any profession. So I don't know if that's
he operates above all professions.
Mike's divergent. You want to take a look at Mike's?
Yes.
Okay, so let's pull this up.
Is man of leisure on that list?
Man of leisure.
Aesthete.
Engineer, mathematician. Wow.
Biostatistician.
There's a lot of science here. This is all science.
That
A lot
high
of
SRV.
a lot of STEM. I mean, like just basically.
Yeah, it's funny because I initially thought I would go into medicine, and then I realized I wouldn't like it at all, and I don't think I
Oh,
would.
but I like the wildlife biologist zoologist.
Yep.
Sure.
That feels on brand.
Yeah.
Birds.
This is
Yeah.
interesting. I mean, but I know I wouldn't. Maybe engineering. Maybe I would like engineering. I don't think I would like anything in medicine. Every time I go to the doctor, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad I don't do this for a living.
My favorite on here, I did look at these prior. I think you'd make a great midwife.
I
Mike.
would make a great midwife.
That'd be a good one.
Well, what's funny about it is, not so much for the engineers, but like so much of the medical stuff for Mike. I'm also thinking about. I like to think of Mike as being kind of, he would have good bedside manner if he were a physician. So I don't know if his personality would suit him for that, right? Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why I have all those disclaimers, right?
Yes.
Like it's not just about the aptitudes, but it's about your interests, your personality, right? Like all these matter. The real value in aptitudes is that these are really hard to measure.
Yeah. Right.
So
it's so interesting, Amy. That put you on the reading writing side and me on the math science side.
It did. I know. Which no, why is that really interesting? Because Mike, as ACT instructors, right, trainers, what do I do predominantly? ELA, reading, writing. What do you do? The math science.
But I think this is illustrative because I don't enjoy those sections as much as I enjoy the reading and writing. I do it because I can do it, but I don't choose to actually focus my time there.
That makes sense. Your interests don't really
align with my abilities. Yeah, that says a lot.
Yeah, that happens to all of us. Yeah. Well, no, there's this kid I worked with who loves history, and he in his words, he says, I'm not very good at it, but I really like it. Well, I tested him, and he had many of the aptitudes that you have, Mike. Like his spatial stuff is really high. Like this kid was born to be like an engineer and like handle stuff, but he really likes history. So yeah, it was tough. He ended up studying data science.
There you go, which is more of a fit for those aptitudes.
Yeah.
So fascinating.
Wow, this really is. Marc, I can't tell you how grateful we are for you to take the time and help us understand ourselves a little better through the lens of the Highlands Ability Battery.
It was a lot of fun. Do you guys feel like you're good at stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think we never wanted for that.
Well,
no, we were good at stuff.
But it confirms some things. But it's also funny, Marc, because you really just recently met us and spent some time with us. So you have this interesting perspective.
I know you very well now. Yeah.
Right now, but you could have had some suspicions, like initially interacting with us, knowing like this was going to happen. And then when the results came back, like, okay, this is interesting. Now he's going to watch us, Mike, through like a different lens in the future. Like, I know things, right?
I'm sure he held a couple of things back that he could tell our colleagues. They don't know this, but...
Right. If I tell you, I have to kill you.
Yeah. What happens in Seattle stays in Seattle. Yeah.
Exactly. 100%.
Well, that's fantastic. What do you think? We could talk about ourselves all day, but unfortunately we're out of time.
This was a blast. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me, guys. This was a lot of fun.
Marc, we're so grateful for you. And now we're going to include the link to the podcast of what is the Highlands Ability Battery in the show notes for this.
Right.
But if anybody wants to get in touch with you just based on your remarkable mastery of the Highlands Ability Battery as evidenced in this video, what is the best way for them to reach you?
You can go to our website at odysseycollegeprep.com or email me at mgray@odysseycollegeprep.com.
Awesome.